Homage to Shakyamuni Buddha, homage to Manjushri, homage to the root guru, subtle dharma, rarely encountered. Can see, hear it, no Tathagata, free sentient beings. Please develop bodhicitta. Now we will continue studying the application of suffering and happiness on the path. Completing application of suffering and happiness. What next? I still don't know yet. I'm considering teaching this and also thinking about teaching that things from before may not be taught. Maybe I'll talk a little about the Analects of Confucius. As for the others, perhaps we'll wait just a while for now. So what exactly we'll be teaching for the time being, I still don't know. Discussing Madhyamika Shastra. Should I discuss entering the middle way? There are all sorts of ideas. Let's decide when the time comes. Application of suffering and happiness. I think it's worth discussing this year, because this year many sentient beings are still quite pitiable. Everyone is afraid of experiencing suffering in their lives. There have been many significant changes, more or less, in various aspects, and a lot of uncertainty, as well as a considerable amount of unpredictability. No one feels secure in their hearts. It's still rather painful. At times like this, having a key instruction, having your own method, your own personal approach is also very practical, especially in your daily life. So when we talk about transforming suffering and happiness into the path, the main point here is essentially to clearly, if there is no suffering, that's truly best, that's great. We don't necessarily have to actually dig up some suffering. There's no need. But on this point, everyone need not worry at all. Everyone has suffering in their lives. If you ask just about anyone whether they have suffering at some point in their lives, they have suffering. Once, during one festive New Year celebration, many reporters simply asked, "Are you happy?" Many people, maybe pretending or maybe sincere, I'm happy, I'm happy. But if another group of reporters came and asked, "Are you suffering?" I think many people would also say, "I'm suffering a lot." Suffering comes in forms. Some people have many kinds of suffering piled together, layer upon layer of suffering, the suffering of suffering. Within this pain, we only talked about 2 or 3 kinds of suffering. For some, it's more than a few kinds. Maybe a dozen different sufferings are all combined together, especially after the outbreak of the pandemic. Most people have experienced significant and notable changes in their personal finances. Perhaps don't feel this, but for many ordinary lay people, there are car and house loans that they can't repay on time. When your life was orderly before, you might have thought that there would be no real problem at all for 3 or even 5 years. But after things changed, when financial situation shifted, and with the global situation politically, you could say there have been changes as well. When we look at news at home and abroad, it really feels like every country is a bit, in some way, it's like no one knows what to think. And there's a bit of anxiety, whether it's in personal relationships or daily life. So much suffering piles up together. Even when you get sick or catch a cold, you start to worry at times like this. When you cough, you wonder, did I catch that illness? Some people fear going to the hospital too. At times like this, when suffering comes to us, you just accept it. And moreover, we should accept it with strength. This is a common practice method, and this method can probably be done even by those who have never practiced before. But more importantly, what are we really talking about now? When I experience or encounter suffering, I should be happier. The opportunity has finally come. At first, this is unrealistic. For many of us, we wonder, can I handle this suffering? We hope that this suffering won't crush us, won't destroy us, and after it's over, again, we wonder, can I handle this suffering? We are always simply observing or hoping that this suffering will eventually end sooner. For example, if I am sick, I hope my illness will end immediately. If others slander me in various ways, I hope this matter will be over soon. Or if others are chasing me for debts, or in all sorts of situations, we hope that it will end. But if someone's practice is a bit better, then when suffering comes, it's just right, they are actually happy. Not many people can reach this state in reality. Not many, but do such people exist? As long as your practice is good, there will be. So in this regard, if we indeed put in the necessary effort and dedication, when you first started listening to this class, it seemed you were especially afraid of suffering, hoping no suffering would happen to you. But in the end, as you keep on practicing over time, no matter what suffering you encounter in life, you will face it very bravely. Not only will you face it bravely, you won't be afraid. And even when suffering truly comes, you will use your own methods to accept it. This is truly something great for each of us. It is also indeed very necessary. Do any of us experience suffering? We certainly do. When we encounter such suffering, if it simply doesn't disturb you or harm you, that is extremely rare, almost unheard of. If each of us could truly reach such a state, a future cycle of samsara, honestly, no matter what you set out to accomplish, you will absolutely be able to achieve it in your life with dedication and persistence. So, this Dharma that we practice, I think, is also very practical. Today, when we talk about the Prasangika Madhyamaka school, whether self-cognition exists, or whether cessation exists, or how the 504 great reasons of the Prasangika school work, these things may be beneficial to our real lives. Maybe it's actually beneficial sometimes. If we analyze deeply, it is possible. But they're very distant from our daily lives. Here we talk about suffering. Everyone can relate to it. I really am suffering. I truly have pain. What should I do about this suffering? I need to practice. When it comes to practice, of course, as we mentioned earlier, yesterday we discussed renunciation. If you cultivate renunciation well, you will also develop renunciation and immediately respond to suffering. If you can pray to the three jewels in your daily life, that is also very good, because the blessings of the three jewels can dispel your suffering, can't be dispelled. Taking refuge in the three jewels provides a place of support. When you are especially suffering, having a place of refuge is indeed very important. This is also very important. Third, today, in particular, we are talking about dispelling arrogance. I haven't recited it, have I?
Geva la gavana, dungor la lupi deva la gana, tija geva la mbato guso, nyamder jeperup samla, urgu tamani gevip chola, gevip cho, jemperup shagor, nyarje la lupana, dagjanda semchang zhanyang dungor, ter tavadang, dili chiyang nartsir, nam samte tijak, tedag jang, dungor, tang charna chimarong, nyamder zhang. Devi pongwa la migne shambab gomtsir yang terter di shiso. Dagwe gjanchi gomba na dang derter dungor ji moktong wa na tongma me pa ne rang chi bir zong we lambe ta na delag ji mjong ne gjan chin zon kona la ne bir shago nyam da gom. Deg dong tigdi shin da ka we jengan da chi ji gevjur de nga ne ji ba kar che jang. Ranyin kang la komba de sarwa ji zogur zong te chena chatchego de ngor gevjur ji chugsu sonwa chigbi jang machukte terter sonwa de lagbar ngo shine di changwa gawa shig chagla jin tanbo jigba ji ngibir de gube cherkid shapa te da kangar sonam de kanse loba de jana ba Gana Jirano Chupashi Chukun Sonen Dwata
Bandarangara Badma Asador Bandarangara Badma Bandarangara Badma Asador.
Next, let's take a moment to talk about our practice in more detail and discuss why it matters to our progress. There is a method of practice that you like to use regularly, counteract pain, or to truly accept and come to terms with your own suffering without any method of practice. I'm afraid it won't work. If we only talk about it theoretically, like in today's class, not only should we accept suffering, but we should also be even happier. I'm so happy. Today I had a heart attack. My illness is very serious, but I'm so happy. say verbally, but whether your heart is truly happy or not is hard to say. Because when suffering is heavy on you, it's hard to bear your heart. You might even lose confidence in life itself, at times feeling uncertain, lose confidence in living. Yes, this can definitely happen. Sentient beings, there really are differences in karmic force. For some, if their karma is lighter, if their negative karma is not so heavy, in general, the suffering they experience is not that severe. They can completely and confidently face it, carefully control it, and patiently endure it if one's karma is heavy and the conditions in this life are also quite complicated, then the suffering they experience can indeed be very hard to endure. In the end, they may not be able to control the torment in their hearts or the illnesses of the body. Some people pass away very peacefully, sometimes even in their sleep without any physical illness, and die in a state of happiness. But some, even great monks and sages, spiritual practice, the intense physical pain they experience, very unbearable. They cry and wail because they have no choice, because the suffering keeps relentlessly tormenting them. Perhaps at such times, I'm very, very happy. I'm in so much pain today. That might indeed be a bit difficult. Sometimes when I experience this kind of deep inner pain, if I do my best to endure it, I feel that I can manage it. But sometimes when the body is ill, for example, whether it's a headache or pain somewhere else, when the pain is sharp, it's hard to bear. If I say I'm happy, I admit my spiritual practice isn't great. It would probably be a bit difficult to feel happy or joyful. But no matter what, if we can fix it, it will still be helpful. So, as I mentioned earlier, I myself have also personally encountered many situations in life that at that particular time felt rather unhappy, uncomfortable, and rough, and were in fact quite difficult and challenging to endure. But because of these things, as a result, I tried to make them something positive. Later on, not only did they not become obstacles, as some might have expected, but in a certain sense, they actually had some real meaning. So I think that when anyone encounters suffering, don't be afraid or worry, what should I do if I get sick? Will I die? There's no need to think that way either. If we understand the principles clearly, if our thinking is correct, then there's no need to be so afraid of many things. For example, if we get sick at that particular moment in time, how do beings in samsara react? Use renunciation method earlier, or rely on the three jewels, or perhaps see this illness as something good for me, because I'm usually quite arrogant. Some of us might say, I'm not arrogant, not at all. Not true. Prelim practices says jealousy and arrogance are very difficult to recognize. You might think of yourself as especially humble and devout, but in the eyes of others, you are actually very arrogant. Moreover, because of your own arrogance and jealousy, cause perhaps creating some rather truly frightening karma in your life. You might not feel it right now, but maybe eventually when you mature in age and wisdom, or when you gain experience, you'll understand. Oh, when my wisdom was not yet mature, it was my arrogance caused it. My jealousy caused it. It was all of those deeply negative and overwhelming emotions that I truly and honestly had at that very particular moment in time that led to it. And I ended up doing so many things I now regret. Situations happen. So next, we are going to talk in more detail about this particular kind of practice, exploring what it involves and why it is important for our understanding moving forward. The method for dispelling suffering, for eliminating arrogance. Eliminate arrogance, just as we discussed earlier. What should we really rely on? On the principle that we are involuntarily and constantly unable to escape the grip of suffering. So what should we rely on first? Rely on what we talked, that all beings in samsara, in fact, sentient beings are pitiable. They are all not in control of themselves. They are constantly unable to escape. This principle is actually very important. If each of us could truly understand the suffering of samsara, especially if we deeply contemplate it, then our spiritual practice in this world would improve in the future. Suffering of samsara, or if we understand the impermanence of the world, in this world, things people often admire, praise, and hype up with great envy, if you actually obtain them, or when you come into contact with them in person, you will understand much more clearly. For example, I often encounter people who are considered relatively wealthy in society, even those who are very rich. Over time, with them, if their hearts lack a level of spiritual practice, they are suffering sentient beings in samsara. Even those with great power, after spending some time with them, wow, if they have nothing in their hearts, they are also just sentient beings in samsara. That's it. This includes, in general, other things in the world that are relatively the worldly pleasures that people often praise. In fact, when you really think about it, they are not actually all that wonderful, not as impressive as you might expect. Behind them, or in their very nature, there are, to varying degrees, many causes and results of suffering. By truly and more deeply understanding these principles above, what then can we subdue? We can destroy enemies, undermining our accumulation of virtuous roots and merit. What enemies? They are arrogance and malice toward others. One is malice, the other is arrogance, these two. If we truly understand the suffering within samsara, or the profound teachings of Buddhism, we can destroy our own arrogance as human beings, and we can end our malice. Because arrogance can destroy our virtuous roots, we don't practice virtuous deeds. We also stop others from doing good. Arrogant people often commit many actions that are not in accordance with the Dharma. If there is malice in our hearts, there is no kindness. Indeed, some people harbor malice and often look down on others in daily life. Karma for scorning others is serious. In the Buddhist scriptures, there is a monk named Niti Bhikshu. In the past, he looked down on his subordinates. Because of this, I have been collecting feces for 500 lifetimes. For 500 lifetimes, he was always removing filth, living as a lowly, humble person. So, in this very life, whether it is because of our wealth, power, or status, or due to various worldly reasons, we may feel that we possess some qualities superior to others. Because of this, we might look down on others because in various ways we mock others or inflict all kinds of suffering, pain, or distress on others. In various ways, the karmic result is that in future lives we will experience great suffering. Moreover, this kind of arrogance, the Saddharma Smriti Upasthana Sutra also mentions beauty, caste, and wealth, and all pleasures are all impermanent. The wise should not trust them. In this world of ours, if we genuinely do have our very own good looks, well, it can also be called arrogance about one's own appearance, pride in birth. I am of the king caste, I am of the leadership caste, and then there's wealth once someone has money. Even the way they walk, it subtly and noticeably changes. Some arrogant people, their manner is truly, really like this. There are also various different musical instruments. No matter what kind of fun toys you have, when we were kids playing, even if we just had a candy wrapper in our hand, we would proudly show it off in front of others, saying, "Look, I have such a beautiful and lovely color." If you had a little piece of candy, you would show others it for days. "Look, I have candy, you don't you? Look, I have a whole pound of brown sugar, you don't, do you?" But actually, in our world, it's the same thing. "Oh, I have a car, I have a house, I am this or that," even in knowledge. College, PhD student. Anyway, everyone feels that when they have some unique trait compared to others, immediately, whether it's maybe even just their attitude, his whole look is completely different. But actually, this really doesn't mean much at all. The wise all know that these contaminated possessions, contaminated wealth, social status, they're all unreliable. There's nothing trustworthy about them. They're like bubbles. You own them now, but who knows what will happen, including during this pandemic. Even now, many families, many people from all walks of life in China or abroad have all been shown very clear and insightful teaching on the nature of impermanence, something that we had never truly imagined or considered before. And this is something that everyone should definitely be able to see with their own eyes. So when you encounter suffering, the arrogance within your mind stream is destroyed. Sometimes I think this way too. Last year, they also gave me, while spreading the Dharma and benefiting beings, it could be considered adversity. But when I encounter adversity, first I feel uncomfortable. But later I think it's actually good, it helps dispel my arrogance. Sometimes it's actually very beneficial for people to go through these things. Because of this, well, I think I hope that all those who are jealous of me can be happy. I've honestly, truly thought about this over and over again. Sometimes we don't even notice it ourselves. Maybe you all should know Khenpo is arrogant, no matter what. Even when he wears a mask, he always wears it crooked. That must be a sign of arrogance. You would probably think that way, I suppose. Can't stand someone. Whatever person does, they always feel so arrogant, such and such. Whether it's walking, talking, or eating, any act can seem that way. But I feel I might not even notice. But no matter what, when I encounter certain situations, sometimes I feel things don't always go smoothly for people. Smoothly, maybe the negative karma they create is serious. They might never be able to truly understand renunciation. They can't develop a truly genuine aversion to samsara. So perhaps it's better now, at this point in time, to develop these mindsets. Maybe that's actually a good thing. Well, so actually, the very first point we're just talking about today is dispelling arrogance through suffering. It's true. In the past, back then, when I was in excellent health, I looked down on everyone. But after I got seriously ill, this person is very pious and quite speaks differently. Back when I was an official, I thought I was special. After he stepped down, I had tea with him. My entire tone was just different. So for everyone, when they possess these contaminated assets, arrogant, but when they lose them, they gradually become even more obedient, more accommodating, and increasingly considerate and thoughtful to others. Sometimes suffering isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, maybe it's actually good. This is the third aspect. The fourth aspect is purifying negative karma. Suffering brings you this significant benefit. We say it's nothing. Even though I'm suffering, at least I'm purifying my karma. Let me suffer karmic obstacles from beginningless time these days. Purifying my karma. In pain, uncomfortable, purifying karma. This is correct. Should we think that this kind of suffering, or even more severe, more intense, and countless sufferings than this, perhaps are entirely the result of the negative karma we have created. This is something we must, especially as Buddhists, believe cause and effect matters. My day-to-day, whether it's illness or even poverty itself, in any form, my poverty today, why is my health bad today? Maybe I killed too much before. Why is it that these days, as soon as I manage to earn even a little bit of money, it's gone? It just disappears quickly. Why is that? Other people have money. Why don't I have any? I think, how many homeless people are there who are even poorer than I am? How many people are poorer than me? What is the source of all this suffering? The source is I took others' wealth by force, or that this suffering comes from having harmed others. We must firmly believe that such karma definitely exists in this world. The karma where good deeds bring good results and evil deeds bring evil results. This karma exists within every sentient being. It is just like the interest or the additional charge on money. It keeps increasing and the growth is very rapid. Moreover, this kind of karma, if you don't create it, you won't encounter it. Once it is created, it will never be wasted or lost. These 4 points should be considered carefully. We often say, karmas of sentient beings, calamities endure, will not be destroyed. When the conditions are ripe, the result will definitely ripen. So if you really do not want to experience or go through any of those kinds, we must completely cut off the causes of suffering. What are the causes? Unwholesome actions. Killing, stealing, misconduct, lying. We should repent using 4 powers of purification. Repent negative karma. We have created beginningless time until now. All the accumulated misdeeds. And we must strive not to commit them again in the future, ever again. We should also really make a vow ourselves we should take this very seriously. In fact, we must treat it with the utmost seriousness. Because when the power of karma truly manifests, no one can do anything about it. There is a line in the Mahaprajna Paramita Shastra, karma's power. It does not actively pursue those individuals who have not created. Retribution comes not destroyed or lost. The karma of sentient beings truly has boundless power, but this karma does not, without any reason at all, actively pursue those who have never committed it. Whoever creates it will inevitably experience its results themselves. When the conditions for this kind of retribution mature, it will definitely ripen within the continuum of sentient beings. It will not ripen on the external elements of earth, nor will it ever perish or disappear. In the meantime, it will not be destroyed or vanish, it not be exhausted. No matter how many thousands of kalpas pass, it will remain. It will not be lost or misplaced in the interim. That is exactly why so many practitioners still have a very strong sense of cause and effect. Clearly, I must not do evil. If I commit evil deeds, it is truly terrifying. Moreover, this kind of negative karma, even if one attains the fruition of an arhat, it is said, or the fruition of a bodhisattva, it will still, nevertheless, manifest. In the past, Master Jexian, who is respected by many, once unfortunately fell seriously ill. Later, in his experience, either a person or another thing appeared before him. The karma you created in the past matures in this life. This karma of his was bearing fruit. No matter how great a monk or virtuous master one may be, they will all indeed experience the suffering brought by negative karma. We should also think in this way, this suffering I'm experiencing now must be helping to purify my karma. This is indeed certainly the case. As stated in the Diamond Sutra, in your next life, you could have been reborn in hell or as a hungry ghost, but because of the particularly intense and powerful karma that exists in this life, heavy karma meets a lighter result. So in this very life, you might experience a headache, or the suffering you experience in this life might mean that you no longer need to be reborn in hell anymore. Why is it that some Buddhists, he used to be in very good health overall, after studying Buddhism and practicing confession, suddenly get worse, or things go, actually, at that particular time, a significant amount of your accumulated karma, including that from your future lives, or even from many lifetimes ahead in the future, perhaps far beyond what we can currently imagine, can be personally experienced in this very life. So when we encounter suffering, we should also think in this way, for example, because these are simply the benefits. One is that it leads people to take refuge in the three jewels. Another is that it helps eliminate arrogance. And when you experience suffering in your life, there are indeed many opportunities to confess your own karma. Some people, if they never get sick, he may never truly repent. He doesn't really know. But as soon as you experience illness, you often immediately go to release captive animals. In the past, I really loved eating delicious seafood, but now I don't eat it anymore. Nowadays, some people even say that certain fish are, in fact, the source of our illnesses. As some claim, but some fish, in fact, apparently don't even have lungs. So saying the source is them is a bit far-fetched. If certain fish species don't have lungs, I'm not sure how that works, but regardless, even if we have the ability or opportunity, we still should not kill or eat these animals, because it is our responsibility to treat them with kindness and respect. Sometimes humans do reflect on themselves. Why is it that this year's illness, in a certain sense, everyone can feel it? It is because we killed too many beings. We should repent, though it's not stated explicitly. But as known, the source of this may still have something to do with the very essence of humanity itself in a fundamental way. This kind of suffering might help us exhaust our own negative karma. It also eliminates the karma of sentient beings. There are benefits in this regard to be considered as well, if we truly have wisdom and consider things from all perspectives. In fact, actually, this is also meaningful in its own way. This is the fourth aspect we've discussed. The fifth aspect is to rejoice in virtuous deeds. Suffering leads one to rejoice in virtue. Previously, some people had no faith and didn't study this, but when suffering occurs, they'll ask, can I make an offering? Aren't you monastics supposed to do virtuous deeds? Should I do some life release? I ask why. Because things haven't been going well for me lately. I'm in so much pain. When people encounter suffering, they really do want to do good deeds. Many people probably have this mindset. Some of our Dharma friends are like this too. Some of our Dharma friends, family members, usually don't believe at all or wear protective safety wheels and similar things. But during the pandemic, many people who never really believed in these things before started asking, can I get some protection wheels? Or some blessed items. Maybe in my home next to me, they heard it could be beneficial. People once opposed it. Many Dharma friends, beloved family members, dear relatives, parents, and kin seemed during this pandemic to really and absolutely believe in chanting mantras and protection wheels and also some blessed pills. They really believe in them. Why is that? Because suffering sometimes has its benefits, suffering can bring them a sense of faith. This is actually a really good thing, and we should deeply reflect on something for a moment. If you want to be free from suffering and attain happiness, then you need to diligently cultivate its causes. And the causes are virtuous deeds to escape suffering and find happiness in this life, or to be free from suffering and find happiness in future life. You must make an effort to practice virtuous actions. Through various means, you should cultivate more virtuous deeds whenever possible. This is very, very important, truly important. What is the direct cause of our happiness? It is truly virtue. What is the direct cause of suffering? It is non-virtue. So by practicing virtue, as a result, we will, with absolute certainty, definitely attain happiness. So this kind of persistent pain gradually over time help you gradually move away from your original suffering and pain. And at the same time, you will also gain virtue and happiness in your life. Or when you're in pain, your faith in virtuous actions should also remain unceasing. We should make such aspirations for ourselves. When we are happy, perhaps everyone has faith and a certain level of realization, and what we discuss is good. But once we truly encounter suffering, you might abandon your faith and slowly give up your practice. This is also a truly very frightening and disturbing thing. Personally, I quite like a scriptural reference from the Avatamsaka Sutra, which we currently have in Tibetan. What does it mean? Scripture in the Avatamsaka Sutra says, even if a burning iron wheel were spinning rapidly on the top of your head, never let this suffering cause you to lose your bodhicitta. In the past, it seems that Elder Master Menkan, he often used this phrase as a way to encourage himself while in prison. It means that even if there is a burning, spinning iron wheel constantly spinning above your head, such pain is truly unimaginable. Even when experiencing this kind of deep emotional and mental suffering, you must never, simply for this reason, let your bodhicitta be lost. We should have an extremely firm conviction, absolutely, without any doubt, so that in the face of any suffering, you will never give up your genuine enthusiasm for virtuous deeds. In fact, this is actually truly very important indeed. Some of us, when we encounter even a little bit of external adversity, immediately want to, some monastics, when they face a small trouble outside, no, I'm scared, I can't. They quickly take off their robes and return to lay life. This situation also happens. Some practitioners, when they encounter even the slightest issue, no, I won't learn it anymore. I really won't be learning it any further. Actually, these people probably haven't truly delved into their practice and study. Because of this, in their hearts, there isn't in fact a very solid or strong faith. If they had truly steadfast faith, they wouldn't be swayed by even just every little disturbance from the outside world. So generally, it's only after going through all kinds of trials and tribulations that you can see whether a person's faith is stable or not. If one's faith, it means that whether facing suffering or anything else, they won't give up. After facing suffering, their joy in virtuous deeds and their spiritual progress will even increase. I often find myself thinking, especially at critical moments, will some people's spiritual resolve falter? This can also be seen. There's a saying among worldly people, as the old saying goes, though I'm not sure if it's appropriate to use it here, which says that a person's body should, ideally, at all times, be light in the saddle, but when facing crucial moments, one must stay calm. There's this saying, what does it actually mean? It means that when a person encounters some disasters, when you encounter some pain, you can see what kind of character they truly have for yourself. There's a saying, adversity reveals true feelings. At the same time, you can also see for yourself how someone's spiritual practice is. Some people, when they encounter even the slightest external difficulty, their entire spiritual resolve completely collapses. But others, no matter how great the storms they face in their lives each and every day, they become even more just like pure gold. The more gold is refined and tempered, the purer its true nature ultimately becomes. In essence, as a result, our faith and our spiritual practice can sometimes be like this as well. Some people at times during this process, it seems that I still cannot quite make it through. So I think of Elder Monk Mencken, who I believe was already quite advanced in age at the time, was imprisoned for 33 years. Some people asked him, did you think of suicide then? He said he thought about suicide. But later, because my name is Menkan, in my dreams, I saw myself teaching and sharing the Dharma in the future. I felt I could come out and teach the Dharma. With this wish, he managed to hold on. He never thought of suicide. Monks and sages ever think about suicide? Some do. Do Dharma friends have thoughts? Khenpos have them. It's possible some people may have thoughts of suicide, but I don't know if they practice meditation in their dreams. I don't really know either. But it's probably best not to choose that path. Such thoughts may occur. But these kinds of thoughts are unreliable. Dharma teachers, Khenpos or Khenmos can have them. Then regular, everyday monks can have them too, if they wish. Among lay practitioners think this way. Actually, when people encounter suffering, all sorts of unreasonable thoughts can at times indeed arise. But at that time, you should pray to the three jewels. You should really try to control these kinds of emotions in the future. Sharing Dharma, helping beings, or practicing in all ways. In some circumstances, it could ultimately become a truly very favorable condition. We should also put it this way. In other words, generally speaking, the only way to increase virtuous qualities is to frequently develop a kind heart. I seem to remember that the treatise of Taishang's Response and Retribution also mentions this. If we harbor a kind heart, then auspicious deities, benevolent spirits, will often accompany you. If you often or even frequently harbor evil thoughts, then fierce deities, malevolent spirits will also follow you. I think this is indeed true. If a person is very kind, no matter what happens, many things will turn out as they wish. But if someone often harbors ill will toward others or themselves, always thinking this is wrong, that is wrong, constantly hating that such a person, it seems that many things really don't go smoothly for them. So some of the sayings of the ancients are not without reason. When we look closely at specific well-defined patterns within those particular arrangements, within some of the laws of the human world, based on our discussion so far, and considering the evidence we have reviewed, we should be able to find some corresponding principles. This now concludes the fifth point. The sixth point is to cultivate compassion. In our hearts, we should think this. All other sentient beings, just like me, are tormented by suffering. Or even when the pain becomes much more intense, growing in how wonderful it would be if they could be free from all suffering. Because when we encounter suffering, suffering has its benefits. What are the benefits of suffering? We truly experience how unbearable this suffering is. At this moment, we think, since I am like this, many sentient beings are suffering just like me, and there are even those who suffer more severely than I do. I hope they can be free from suffering and find happiness. When many people really encounter suffering, those who have practiced bodhicitta will often do this. I've been in a bad mood and feel unhappy. I wish that other sentient beings wouldn't have to suffer so much. In fact, the suffering of sentient beings is pitiable. For example, if I'm poor, I experience the suffering of poverty. I can then feel the pain of other poor people. If I am tormented by illness, I feel pain others endure. There was a period in the past when my foot was in great pain, truly. I would limp as I walk. From that time on, whenever someone with difficulty walking, I would always feel a strong and deeply rooted sense of empathy, especially towards others. Once on a plane, there was a person, and after landing, the walking distance to the baggage claim was honestly quite long. It was really quite far. But I saw someone ahead of me whose luggage was heavy and who had trouble with their foot. I really helped him carry his luggage all the way to that place. I felt that when your foot hurts, it's really hard to bear. So for each of us, for example, when I experience discomfort in a certain way, if it feels unpleasant, I will help others. You can also make a vow in your heart. And for sentient beings who lack happiness, cultivate loving kindness. Earlier, we talked about cultivating compassion. Here, we can also cultivate loving kindness. Sentient beings in this world are still very pitiable. So we can cultivate both compassion and loving kindness. Through our own suffering, we can arouse compassion for all beings. Do not impose on others what you yourself dislike. We know the things that make us unhappy. In fact, sentient beings are also unhappy. Sometimes, for example, we can also imagine the suffering of sentient beings in war, the suffering of sentient beings in famine, the suffering of sentient beings in disasters. But when it comes to these kinds of suffering, if we consider the suffering of other sentient beings, there's still a difference compared to our own suffering. In the past, the elders in Tibet used to say that burning moxa over clothes is different from burning moxa directly on your flesh. What does this mean? When suffering is felt on your own head or by your relatives, you feel especially distressed. When this suffering is experienced by someone distant from you or someone you're not close to, you might not really feel much at all. That's why spiritual practice is lacking. For example, take this infectious illness, the coronavirus, which you may have heard about. If it happens to you at some point or to someone in your family, you become extremely anxious inside. What should I do if my family member gets this? But if someone who has nothing to do with you befalls, maybe you don't care at all. Or if it happens in your own country, you get quite anxious. What should we do? This is so painful. But if it's another country or even a country you don't get along with, you might even think the opposite. Hump. They deserve it. That's how it should be. You act so tough. So let's just see how you handle it now. But in reality, if you truly practice compassion as a Mahayana Bodhisattva, you bear the suffering of all sentient beings and you shed tears just the same. As long as they are sentient beings, when they see others in pain, they feel the same pain themselves. Of course, whether we can really cultivate this or not is another question. Just like I mentioned earlier about burning moxa sticks, when you put it directly on your skin, it's uncomfortable, painful to stand. But if you put it on your clothes, you barely feel anything. I find this sentence very interesting. When suffering hits you or your loved ones, it feels especially unbearable. When it happens, others doesn't affect you. When it happens to someone you care about, you feel upset, not attached to someone, or even someone you just have an average relationship with, your attitude is really quite different. So through reflection, we can make suffering part of our spiritual path. This is one method that you can use. The seventh and final method is to practice cherishing others more than yourself. In our hearts, we should contemplate and meditate in this way. The reason I am so entangled in suffering is because since beginningless time, I have put myself first. From now on, what should I really focus on exclusively? All sources of happiness come from benefiting others and cherishing beings. I must, from this moment forward, help others, benefit sentient beings. Why am I still suffering? We sentient beings have always been pitiable because we love our own bodies, love our own family, and truly love everything that belongs to us. Because of this, I am truly suffering a great deal today. Since beginningless time, I have rejected other sentient beings and abandoned sentient beings. For this reason as well, I am deeply afflicted. In fact, loving myself and resenting other beings, this is truly the very source of suffering. Now, relying on the guidance of Mahayana spiritual teachers, I have come to understand that myself and others are all sentient beings alike. Therefore, from this moment on, won't harm sentient. I will also let go of self-cherishing. I must work for all beings' benefit. This is a lofty goal. In theory, we can talk about it, but whether we can truly let go of ourselves in practice and do things that genuinely benefit sentient beings is not at all easy, as you might expect. However, as students of the Mahayana Bodhisattva path, we should definitely take steps in this direction. We should strive and make efforts. This is our rightful responsibility. Otherwise, after all, why would we ever bring about the arising of bodhicitta? No one is forcing you. They are telling you that it is necessary for you to generate bodhicitta, the mind of awakening. There may possibly be people around you who pressure. Not so. We generate bodhicitta of our own free will, sincerely and wholeheartedly. The sentient beings in the three realms are truly pitiable. We should do our best, even if it's just a little bit, to create opportunities for their liberty. So generating bodhicitta in this way is also extremely good. Really, therefore, we practice cherishing others more than ourselves. Esteem others. We might first practice self-other equality and self-other exchange. Then practice cherishing others more than ourselves. Otherwise, as ordinary people in our daily lives, what we call loving others is quite often fake. In reality, it's actually self-love. But even this kind of love is actually harmful to ourselves, because for many people, this attachment to love ends up harming themselves and others. So who truly possesses real love? It is the Mahayana Buddhist practitioners. Only bodhisattvas have true love. They possess great love. Their love is truly true love. The love of ordinary beings is entirely false. In fact, it can be negotiated. In some cases, seven hatred is possible, because the effects it brings, behaviors it leads to, are not necessarily beneficial in any way to sentient beings. In this regard, our deluded minds as ordinary people are just like this. Really. So what have we discussed above? We talked about how when experiencing suffering, whether it's emotional pain, physical hardship, or difficult moments, one should feel joy. Saying joy is not enough. You must choose a specific practice for yourself. What is the amendment, please? Earlier, we already discussed 7 types of practices. I also hope that our fellow practitioners can see if they can practice 1 or 2 of them. It's not necessary to practice all of them. Practicing all of them would also require a certain amount of time. But among them, developing renunciation, or praying to 3 jewels, or when you are experiencing suffering, truly, for instance, when you are ill, you can think, may my illness take the place of the suffering of other sentient beings. Many of us really do think this way. If I get sick this time perhaps, and other sentient beings do not, if I can take their place, how wonderful that would be. I encountered such an unexpected big thing this time. It is very hard for me to face it. But by using this suffering to substitute for the suffering of sentient beings, may many sentient beings reduce their suffering. If we think this way, then our suffering truly becomes so much more valuable and truly becomes deeply. Now, let's talk about this. In reality, when suffering truly befalls you, it's very hard to apply the teachings in practice. If you haven't practiced well in advance, when suffering comes, you try to make it the path. It really is quite difficult indeed. The suffering has already come upon you and you are in pain. For example, let's say we've just finished learning about transforming suffering into the path after class, told your parents died, and then something like that happens to you at that moment. You might think, what I just learned is that I shouldn't feel pain. But it's not that you can't feel pain. You can't generate joy. You can't say, my parents died, I'm happy. That's not possible either. But this kind of pain you feel, actually, if we really think about it, maybe your parents passing, that you fully understand the suffering of samsara and develop a deeper conviction about it. At that moment, the pain you felt is not meaningless at all. So when real suffering actually does come upon you, it can be hard to include it in your path. What should you do? That's why you should first practice those virtuous actions that are mixed with adverse conditions. This is very extremely important. We should practice in advance. Just like before going to the battlefield, soldiers are always rigorously training each and every single day and have already trained for so many days. Some soldiers have never actually fought in a war and spend their whole lives training. But when it comes time to fight, when all his weapons are used, they handle them with great proficiency and ease. In the same way, while practicing spiritually, cultivating renunciation, meditating, or practicing self-other exchange, as mentioned earlier, you should also practice under adverse conditions, such as, for example, enemies who intentionally harm you or harmful situations. There are certain teachings that should be practiced in conjunction with these. If you practice like this, when you will find your mind to be significantly more tolerant and open. Why are some practitioners so resilient? Not only are they resilient, but their practice becomes more successful. The reason is that they have prepared in advance. In fact, anything in our worldly life is also achieved through training. Whether you are studying, learning a skill, or even engaging in spiritual practice, all of these come through training. With training over time, terrifying suffering can be transformed on the path. If you haven't trained, even happiness can become a cause for utter disaster for you. So, as you can probably tell, this is incredibly important and significant. If you can combine it in some way with what you are used to, one that you are exceptionally skilled at in particular, it's effective. This point is also very important. We hope that many people from all walks of life, while they are still young, while they still have the opportunity, would practice at least one method. If you don't practice, then when you truly encounter impermanence, no one can really do anything. This time, as we reflect on the year 2020, whether we call it a great disaster, it started as a pandemic, and later, while it may not have been a true famine, there have been many famines in places like Africa throughout history, in war, famine, disasters, or man-made. These should make us human. Reconsider our usual arrogance and carelessness and develop a new understanding. Sometimes some practitioners, for example, some people have savings, some money. When facing difficulties, use it. Some of us who practice, when practice is accomplished, facing disasters or suffering, we can fully draw upon and use our spiritual wealth. If we have nothing daily, like some Westerners now, if you have nothing, then when disaster strikes, it can be extremely painful. Even if you have heard many teachings, but you really haven't practiced well enough at all, then it really is a bit difficult. So for us, we're not exactly very old yet. Some people, aged, their eyes can't see clearly, and their ears can't hearing teachings with Dharma friends. Their whole body has significant trouble moving and functioning properly, and their memory gradually declines over time as well. At that time, if you want to practice well, I'm afraid you might not be able to do it very well. So, as ancient people of the world said, do not wait until old age to learn the way. Most graves belong to the young. Therefore, we really shouldn't simply wait until we're old before we start taking action or making important decisions, starting to study the way late in life. We shouldn't wait till then, learn way. So what should we do? We should start when we're young, when your memory is still quite good, when you still look really, truly, absolutely good, when you can hear clearly and see clearly. If someone is already 70 years old, or perhaps even 80, which means they can't even write characters clearly at all, the words on the screen, on the PPT that you see, which are displayed, have glasses, switch pairs. Even after switching glasses, you can't see clearly. At that point, it really is a bit too late. We really should, I think, while we still have just a little bit of our own precious time left, physical strength and energy, and when all kinds of conditions are relatively favorable, prepare something useful for the way. I will definitely experience suffering. Personally speaking, what has really helped me a lot before is preparing some various medicines I'm interested in. It's just like when we're going to the plateau, we need to prepare and bring some medicines in advance. Smart people do this. So through life, will we suffer? Yes, we will. So what should we do when suffering arises? Should I cry and say, I don't want suffering? That won't work. So when suffering comes, what do? Everyone has their own way in life. I think this is, in my opinion, really very important. At that time, even if you try to buy it with money, you might not be able to get it. So no matter who you are out there, you still have many unfinished experiences of birth, aging, sickness, and death, all kinds of suffering. For these sufferings, what kind of attitude should we really have? Exactly, when we are facing them. This is also, in fact, very important. So I hope everyone here let me put it this way, if I may, just for a moment, when it comes to transforming suffering and happiness into the path, I can't say I have realized emptiness. But in this regard, myself, if I were to offer everyone a suggestion here, honestly, it probably wouldn't really be that bad, because whether in my own practice or when facing all kinds of situations, circumstances, challenges, difficulties, and problems, I still try to gently view suffering as something truly positive, in a real sense. Every time I encounter some suffering, I think I can't avoid this suffering right now, but I can accept it. As for acceptance, the way I accept it isn't by charging straight through, nor is it about always forcing my way through. Sometimes you really can't push through. There's nothing you can do. At those times, I make use of that suffering to change my previous behavior. And then in another dimension, I look for its value and meaning. This is my method, really. I also hope that each of our fellow practitioners can see it's probably impossible to avoid suffering. For each of us, for example, my place of residence, I can't think that this will always be my home. Otherwise, when the time comes, I will definitely have to leave it. My friends and family, always my friends' family, leave them, and we can't imagine that we would ever leave them either. All of these things I have, didn't I use a metaphor? If we save money, we really shouldn't put it all in one place. Otherwise, if that bank goes bankrupt, or if the investment fails, then all your money is tied up there, and you'd be left penniless in a pitiful state. But we can't place all our hopes on a single specific thing or just one single method and nothing else. We must always be mentally prepared for the worst case scenario. So over all these years, truly, including all my own house and my own possessions, I think of them as temporary. In this cycle of samsara, there is nothing permanent, nothing eternal. It seems others that I'm too pessimistic. How is that? You should live a truly happy and fulfilling life. You are honestly so bad. We can also think of it this way. We're not that pessimistic. Encounter suffering. Perhaps we are even more optimistic. When it comes to these matters, we also face them proactively. We are not simply passive or escapists in this regard, but indeed, in your life, when objective realities arise, if you don't have a reliable method, it's very hard to actually get through them. So in this world as we see it, turn suffering into path are still very much needed indeed. If you are prepared, then the root of worldly sufferings will not cause you any harm or trouble at all. Absolutely none whatsoever, rest assured. Even this pain, sometimes it really hurts, can become something even more beneficial in your practice. Buddha's biography says, if it weren't for Devadatta in this situation, the Buddha would not have been able to perfect the 6 paramitas. It was because of Devadatta, after all. He accomplished all the 6 paramitas and the 10 paramitas. When you think about it this way, what initially seemed like, how could this be? Devadatta was so evil, but for dedicated practitioners such as the Buddha himself, perhaps there are certain methods that require thinking from a different perspective. Therefore, when we practice transforming suffering into the path in our lives, mentioned here, it is best to combine what you are used to. The ones you are very skilled at and accustomed to, whether you practice bodhicitta, renunciation, or impermanence. What I personally prefer to practice is renunciation and impermanence, because in many situations in life, see them as impermanent. A lot of suffering just disappears. I was healthy, but now my body has become like this. I used to be a pretty decent person because we tend to compare the good and the bad sides. Now, this is just how I am, because suffering usually is a rather coarse, deeply unsettling and distressing state of mind. it is something truly quite cruel and miserable, then you immediately contemplate impermanence, and it doesn't seem like such a big deal anymore. Healthy, but now today I've been diagnosed with late stage cancer. You ask a doctor about treatment, and the doctor says, we can't help. You only have 3 months to live. 3 months isn't bad, almost 100 days. I will use time to, I don't know, see if you can think like this. If I can, it shows my practice is quite good. Everyone should, through this kind of thinking. I think in this world, perhaps the happiness you gain will be even greater. Of course, we certainly shouldn't place too much trust in samsara, a bad person. If you truly believe that he is in fact a very good person, the outcome he brings you in the end may not ultimately be so good. Because we have no real understanding of samsara at all, and if we think it's especially wonderful and good, then the answer it gives you in the end won't be so optimistic. We must understand true nature samsara to truly understand the suffering of this world. Then when many things happen, you will be mentally prepared for what lies ahead and ready to face any challenges that may come your way. Young people, some university graduates, think that the human world is like paradise, especially with some of our news media constantly guiding them towards worldly happiness and joy. Now, anything can be hyped up on the internet. People, I must enjoy such a wonderful life. But when you enter the world, when you enter samsara, most of it is really just a dream, after all. Between this dream and your gentle, beautiful, soft reality, not only a vast distance, sometimes your dreams and your real life can feel very similar, are truly and completely at odds with each other. What you end up experiencing is nothing like what you imagine. It's usually the opposite. Many people start to question how they view this world. So let's just reflect on all aspects of life. To contemplate is to practice. To keep thinking about it, maybe that's perhaps a better way. Suffering, happiness, path, there isn't a profound theory. But if you contemplate it deeply, even just for a moment, Dharma friends in the future will truly be very strong in their practice. No matter if they themselves fall ill or get sick, they still won't cry. Not even a single tear. I'm really sick. What should I do? I'm so unlucky. If a family member dies or a friend in lay life, there is much suffering. Some people don't even need a real reason to suffer. They just feel pain. If we don't practice well, don't say that practitioners, as some ordinary person, hard to manage. So, as you can see, this pith instruction, sometimes we find it to be really very effective. Everyone should contemplate it thoroughly. There are few words, but the content should be quite extraordinary and very practical. If we become truly and deeply familiar with it, perhaps in this lifetime, compared to Dzogchen or Madhyamaka, deeper teachings, you might find this more applicable. In fact, if the Dharma can't be applied, besides merit, it doesn't have much significance. If we can actually apply it, even if it's just a single verse from the text itself, like the verse from the Avatamsaka Sutra that Elder Monk Menkan just mentioned, you can treat it as in your times of hardship. I won't lose my bodhicitta or my faith in the three jewels. If that's the case, then perhaps truly this class of mine for you should be genuinely meaningful in every possible way. But if your mind isn't really concentrated and focused in this direction at this particular moment, no matter how many classes you attend, it might not necessarily be beneficial. Therefore, we hope that the suffering of sentient beings can truly be transformed into the path. Because now we are talking about worldly suffering, transforming it into the path. In conventional terms, the ultimate meaning we will discuss later. That's all for today's talk, folks.
Bandara